Welcome to another edition of Let's Build HubSpot Adoption with Tony Dowling. How you doing, man?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you again for adding good afternoon. As it is, it's just 2 o'clock this side of the world, very grey and flat, very Christmassy. Oh, mostly rain, no snow. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I do my best to keep a worldly view, so I appreciate that. Doing all right. Not enjoying this time off of content creation. I can tell you that. So glad you're willing to,
Oh,
do
I
the
am.
hard work
I'm
during the
so
holiday
bored.
season.
I am so bored. I, I've had a lovely time. Like you can't fault it, and certainly, like everything has wound down clients-wise anyway. But Mike, I've been fiddling with ChatGPT, trialing
Oh
different
man.
video software. I'm so bored. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get going on this today. So apologies in advance if I'm a bit excited.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's the only difference. We're not doing it in public
Yeah,
this season.
yeah,
Like we're still doing it. Definitely probably can't turn that mode
no,
off after discovering it this year. So we are going to talk about this year though.
yeah.
It's been an interesting one. Uh, a lot of hmm, shiny toy, shiny new things happening while underneath and behind the scenes trying to be out front. uh
Sorry, is
you
your
know
food back? I'm gonna
we
make my lunch.
we
Right.
Love you, Dad.
Love you too.
I
Sorry,
love it.
Chris.
I love it. No, this is real life. This is why we're out here, like,
This is right.
and why we just need to be out here having these conversations. um the conversation of why HubSpot doesn't work for people,
Hmm.
right, has been overly focused on doesn't do all the same things as Salesforce, or they release this product and it's not doing enough, it's not ready. I would just wish it did this thing. Um, all of these kind of tactical, technical reasons people find for HubSpot not being good enough, or needing more HubSpot or needing more help with it. And when you dig in, that's why I've loved our show. Like
Hmm.
it's not HubSpot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Never's it never ever is HubSpot.
It never is. I thought this morning in prep, because I do prep for the show, if only emotionally. I was thinking to myself that there are so many ways and reasons for HubSpot to go wrong. I think that's part of the problem, right? Because if you think of the adage, I love this adage, right? What's the perceived problem? What's the actual problem? Right. So the perceived problems in any kind of CRM implementation, any kind of technical implementation, any kind of transformation are legion, right? There's millions of them. You've got bad data, you've got unoptimized processes, you've got siloed teams, you've got all the things that we talk about, everybody else talks about. And you see like a million versions of on LinkedIn, and this is why this tool orientation comes from, I think. People say, I've got bad data, I've got a tool for that. We've got siloed teams, I've got a tool for that. We can't enable our users properly. Sales enablement is lacking. We've got a tool for that. So each of these problems attracts its own solution, right? But we never address the actual problem. And the curious thing, as you've just said, it's my belief that even though there are all these problems, there's only one solution. There's one solution to all of the problems. And that is the management, the leadership aspect of what you're doing with HubSpot in the first place, whether it's a full-blown transformation, which is what we're talking to a lot of our clients about at the moment, or a more modest movement, say, to a CRM in the first place, or to a centralized data resource, or something like that. You'll spot the problems. You'd be whack-a-mole with the problems, I think we call it in the US. You'll have a fly swatter for all the problems. There's loads of them, but the solution is always the same. And that solution is what we call, we characterize the problem as the adoption gap. And the solution to closing the adoption gap is always the same. And that is a management problem. It's not technical, it's not teams. It's not about enablement. It's not about training. It's not about resource. It's not about any of those things. It's about all of those things, but it's about ultimately it boils down to management.
Yeah. And it took me maybe a few months uh, to really get to that realization. It was about this time last year where I was with my first client, our first client as an agency, right? And somebody
Mm,
who I've known for a long time. He trusts what I've brought as far as HubSpot goes. I originally built, uh, a couple portals back in 2018, 2019, and we were going back and forth on this, on the idea of what was needed for the website, right, as a part of
mm,
the audit and all the things that we did up front to try and help like growth plan for 2024. And the budget's not there, to do it the way it needs to be done for an external person to do it, right? And we're sitting there, and I said, "Look, like, there's nobody better positioned to do what needs to be done than you,
100%.
right? As the founder of the organization, and I've seen you learn other systems that you have to learn to support the business, to support your initiative, to support your goals, to support your team, right? Including crap like QuickBooks,
Yeah,
right? And if I know you believe in HubSpot and what it can do, nobody will be able to have more impact and get more ROI than you using HubSpot, which means adoption, right? Him adopting HubSpot and then doing it in front of his team, right? And I think we get carried away on this adoption meaning using HubSpot
mm,
necessarily, using the tools.
mm,
But in our conversations, we've been talking about adoption, that HubSpot is the platform that we grow the business on.
yeah,
And hearing that from leadership, hearing that like leadership is the only one that can set that tone, right? And if they don't, then you don't get the adoption anywhere else except for the very siloed super users who understand how powerful it can be for them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And those are usually the ones speaking the loudest in on social and whatever, but then we hear, the rest of the teams that are struggling, and so that was when I first realized it, and it was powerful. It was a
mm,
powerful realization, and I immediately switched the strategy to, okay, I love you champions. I love the super users, but I can't talk to you. If you really want something to happen with your HubSpot, we've got to talk to leadership. Got to
yeah.
get management in the conversation.
And this is where we fail time and again as partners, and not fail, hard fail. I mean, it's a step we don't take. It's a missing piece, whatever you want to call it, because of course, management typically see HubSpot as a tool, and are trained to delegate stuff, right? They're trained to stay out of this stuff, right? But that's the missing piece, if you like. This is the lack of realization on their part. I think there's a lack of realization as to how important closing the adoption gap is, or whatever you want to call it, just the business strategy is. And there's a lack of understanding as to what HubSpot can also do for them as well. So and I think that in part is driven by, yeah, it's great for email, it's great for social, it's brilliant for automation, it'll do this fantastic thing, and you can build this extension card. And this focus we have on the tools constantly, because of the focus on the tools, because we talk about the tools, and let's face it, because the sales reps sell point solutions, they sell use cases, they sell features, they sell benefits, then people don't understand what it is they're buying into, right? So I go back, I had exactly the same realization. It took 5 years for me to have it as a HubSpot partner, serving clients, doing onboardings, doing implementations, integrations, and coming up with the same conclusion over and over and over again. And that is the management teams of these businesses. And that may be because my leadership background, right? But the management teams of these businesses have no idea what I'm talking about. And again, not in a negative, they're dumb sort of way. I just mean they're not on the wavelength. They don't think of it that way. They're not considering it from that perspective, right? So my science brain, I started off as a physics student back in the day in university, and all we were about when it comes to physics was simplicity, right? The whole idea was to break the complex down to its most basic component parts. You see that everywhere, right? The physicists talk about atoms, don't they? Because they don't talk about molecules. They don't talk about particles. We don't talk about matter. We don't talk about stuff. We break it down as small as we possibly can. So I'm applying the same thing to these problems that I'm seeing consistently and realizing that 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, 999 times out of 1,000, the issue the business is having with utilizing HubSpot is they don't know how to do it. And that's because the management team have not been trained, have not been enabled, have not been shown how to do it. So this is where the HubSpot is not a strategy comes from, right? Because people go, oh, we need to grow our business. Let's get HubSpot. HubSpot's not a strategy. HubSpot's not going to grow your business. And I think there's also a fear, and this is driven by, let's come back to that. There's also a fear that making things simple is going to cause you some sort of problem, right? You've got to make things more complicated. I remember when I did my marketing degree, I couldn't believe how basic it was. So I'd done a physics degree, bearing in mind. My next degree was a marketing degree. I've done sales stuff as well. But I remember thinking, this is just all bollocks. This is literally an attempt to obfuscate what is very, very fundamentally simple to make it sound like marketers know what they're doing. Marketing is very, very straightforward. Sales is very, very straight. And guess what? HubSpot is very straightforward. And running a business is very straightforward. Doing it is the trick, right? Doing it is the hard part. Having the plan is the easy part. But we get distracted by the doing it. We get distracted by the fires. We get distracted by the fact most corporations are like goldfish and they've got 5-second memory. They don't remember the problems they solved last week and they re-employ it. There's just all of this like clutter, and then along come the SaaS sellers, along come the AI people, along come the the latest fads and the latest this and that, and everything gets really complicated. This is why you've got to strip it back to the most basic, fundamental things. Where are we? Where do we want to be? How do we go from there to there? That's our strategy. We turn over 100 grand, we want to get to 1 million. We turn over 1 million, we want to get a 50 million. We turn over 50 million, we want to get a 500 million, right? Whatever the problem is, it's going to be something along those lines. How are we going to do that? Oh, well, okay, so we need to improve our product. We're going to do that. Great. So that's a strategic aim, right? We need to explore new markets. Fantastic. That's a strategic aim. We need to improve our distribution. We need to improve our communication. We need to get better at selling. All of these things come out of that very simple analysis. We are here. We want to be there. How are we going to get there? Now, once you understand those things, the things that you have to do, all I'm going to do is I'm going to build HubSpot around you and that strategy to support your journey from there to there. It couldn't be more simple than that. It couldn't be. And sometimes you're not going to need sequences and workflows, and
most times.
So you know, which is cool, and sometimes you will, and that's also cool, right? But the point is, don't start by looking at the tool and go, what can this do? What can it do? You start by saying, what do I need to do? And that's, I think, the step that we miss so often.
Yeah, and that's like definitely the space I try to, or I've been targeting in my internal roles, and now I naturally gravitate towards is this transitionary period. The mom and pop shop wants to grow for real. The garage business wants to, turn into sustainable growth. And it's just like helping them understand why they need to understand the current state and just helping them think about those things, because they often don't, or they've never been trained how to. They've created a great product. They figured out how to tell people it was great, and they started selling some stuff, and now they're $6 million, right? But then you get into the conversation. They've had HubSpot for a year. They've got the whole platform. But why does anybody get HubSpot? They need some lead generation, right? So the whole process of bringing HubSpot into the business is because I heard HubSpot is great for lead generation.
Yeah.
Right. So then they get onboarded. and that's the only thing they focus on. And then we get to the point where, and this is drawing from real conversations here, but we have, because I'm usually the last line where it's like, we've heard HubSpot, we see these 6 hubs. I have no idea how to use them, but I know I need more than just lead gen, right? I don't know how though, right? But we're invested in the system. I don't want to switch systems, but I'm considering it because I'm clearly not getting the value out of the money that I'm spending. And then we have the conversation. Okay, you want to go from 6 to 26 million. How are you going to do that? Well, we want to do, customer retention and expansion and focus on customer relationships, which is usually as the post-sales guy, that's why we're in the conversation in the first place.
Yep.
But then it still comes back to, but do you do anything with lead gen? I'm like, none of what we just talked about has anything to do with lead gen, and it's the last thing you need right now. We've already established that's not how you're going to get from 6 to 26. But lucky for you, HubSpot is the best platform still to help you do that, right? And here's how we use the rest of the platform. Here's how, like you say, we build it around that strategy, right? Because it's the best strategy if you can do that, if you can target your customer base and expand 3x through that, which a lot of companies can, right? Then do that, right? It just requires a completely different approach to what the best practices related to HubSpot are.
And I think this is, Max Trailer talks about this a lot. It talks about upselling, cross-selling within, that's my words, not his, but he talks about maximizing the return from the people who've already sold to. We used to say the easiest people to sell to somebody who's already bought, which makes a lot of sense, right? And you can't really do that without some kind of customer relationship management system, some kind of understanding of history. What have they bought? What haven't they bought? I did I call it a truth chart. I did one using the CRM just before Christmas. A list of all of our customers, and across the top, all of the different things that we've offered for sale, and basically how many have bought each bit. So say there was a half a dozen things for sale, the vast majority of them have bought one thing. So there's an opportunity there. 100 clients times 5 other things. There's 500 opportunities just by looking at my CRM, right? But to get there, you have to step back and say, okay, how are we going to close this gap? How are we going to close the revenue gap? Right. Let's focus on the people that we've already got. Great. What are we going to do? We'll use the truth chart. Fantastic. How can HubSpot users help us do that? Well, we've got products, we've got target accounts, we've got reports we can run. It's all I used HubSpot to do it for myself. Right, took a couple of minutes. That's a strategic use of HubSpot. You first of all decided that you want to go to those customers to find that money, or if it's lead gen, if it's lead, how are we going to attract leads? You've got to address some pretty fundamental stuff for HubSpot to provide you with leads. You've got to have a product market fit. You have to have some sort of advantage, even if that's you spend more money on advertising than anybody else, which is a robust strategy. If you're going to out promote the competition, there's every chance you'll get the leads that they'll otherwise get. Or perhaps you've got a shit out product. Fantastic. How are you going to communicate that? All of these strategic questions need to be answered before you worry about which part of HubSpot you switch on to support it. It just so happens, and we know this, and it'll probably support any part of your business. The point of the customer platform, and why I love HubSpot so much, is you can plonk the whole thing on top. Think of it, HubSpot as a table. We can put the whole thing on top of it. We can build it all in this unified code base, all in a unified CRM system. Fantastic for operational efficiency, fantastic from a price perspective, brilliant. But we still got to know what we want to do. So back in the day, back in the 90s, I think maybe 2000s, I forget. Time dims my mind, Chris, But there's a rugby team, and they probably are the best in the world now, still occasionally anyway, the All Blacks, the New Zealand All Blacks.
Probably the only one I know by name.
They're probably the only one everybody knows, right? But I could be Ireland number 1 now, or South Africa. I think South Africa probably number 1. Anyway, the All Blacks became very famous. They become very media savvy. and they did a lot of public relations stuff. They're on videos everywhere, around the World Cups and things like that. Right? Everybody knew them. But they used to talk about this idea, this principle. Before you can cut loose and score all the tries, you've got to make the hard yards, right? You've got to win the ball, and you've got to put the ball into a position that you can capitalize on that possession. You're not going to score a try probably from your own try line, right? So we want to move through phases. We want to move up to the pitch until we're in a position where we can make, and those are the hard yards. And this is the issue with business and business strategy particularly. So many people are not doing the hard yards. They're not doing the hard yards. They're looking for quick fixes. They're listening to the salespeople, to peers. So everybody says, oh, Asana will do that. ClickUp will do that. HubSpot will do that. You know, software is great, fantastic, brilliant. And they buy all this software. Then they're not doing the hard yards. They don't even know how they're going to solve the problem that they're trying to solve with these tools yet. And I think that's been my realization over this year, you know, that we've transitioned from fully technical, very technical, I would say, actually, to, you know, trying to answer this problem. Why does it keep going wrong? Why is it that every time we do something with somebody, we go back to them in a couple of months and they're like, oh, we moved to Salesforce, or we don't use it anymore, or why did that keep happening? And realizing that actually it was about this strategy. HubSpot's not a strategy. And now moving to where we are, which is, okay, if you don't have if you've got a strategy, fantastic, quid's in. Go to any HubSpot partner on the planet and they'll sort you out. If you know what your strategy is, just tell them what your strategy is. All right, maybe not any. Go to most HubSpot partners on the planet and they'll be able to build HubSpot around your strategy, right? Many of them will probably attempt to take you in different directions, so-called best practices. I hate that word, best practices. But if you've got your strategy, fantastic. But how many don't have a strategy? How many know exactly where you are, know exactly where you want to go, and how to go there? That's the bit that I get really excited about working with people. That's why we've got business consultants in our operation. That's why we've got management consultants. That's why we've got project managers now working at a really high level with us. Our latest addition is actually a professor at the local university, sales and marketing professor. And he's going to come in and do some strategy work with our clients for us. It's because it's so important. You know, this is so important to get this bit right before you worry about the HubSpot bit.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm curious because I've been watching your journey this year, seeing this happen real time. It's been super interesting. And there was a moment, and I'm just curious, and it could be a quick no and we can move on, but where you were trying to find a niche, right? And you had, you know, you were dabbling in medical devices, right?
Yeah.
What did you learn? Like, are there learnings from there that kind of led to you, okay, we cannot address this any other way than the foundational strategy piece?
That is exactly what happened. So we still work in medical technology, medical equipment, and we're still with the big client that led us down that route. Anyway, we'll be starting a new tranche of work in the new year, which is fantastic. And I'm not going to name them. You will probably be able to find out who they were if you were that interested. But I'm not going to say who they are because there was a large reason behind where we went was our engagement with that company. Because as hard as we all worked, us and them, they never got the traction they deserved to get using HubSpot for the reasons that we've been talking about, because HubSpot is not a strategy. So they were incredibly transactional in their approach, extremely short-termism in their approach, very much about this quarter, this month in their approach. And we didn't start with where are we, where do we want to go, how are we going to close it? We started with what we usually start with, which is jump in, both feet, let's get it fixed. And we fixed everything. If it wasn't nailed down, it got fixed. You know, we put fires out, we fixed things, we built reports for things, reports on top of report, put in custom objects. We did everything that they needed, that they asked for, and didn't deliver what I consider we should have delivered. And it bugged the shit out of me. It really drove me mad because in many ways, this was a big opportunity for our business. This was the biggest client that we'd ever had, not only in terms of spend, but in terms of employment. They were employing 150, 160 people. They were perfect for us. They were exact, and we weren't delivering what I wanted to deliver. Now, we've earned the right. There's been lots of things have gone on, lots of changes have been made, and we've earned the right to go back in and do it properly. Thank goodness. So in the new year, this will come full circle, and we're going to go, right, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. Right? And that experience was the catalyst for the realization what the adoption gap was, and the realization is why it's so key to moving the whole business forward. The realization that it's the strategy that closes the adoption gap, not the tools, not the people, not the technology. It's the strategy that closes the adoption gap. But what we thought regarding niche, what we then thought was actually, this is a horizontal niche, rather than a vertical niche. Because I'm damn sure medical equipment manufacturers are not the only people who suffer with this problem. And since we've seen it everywhere, literally everywhere. So, but we've niched, if you could say that, into the adoption gap itself. So the niche to medical equipment in the first place, which narrowed our focus, helped us understand what it was we wanted to be, allowed us to work with some of our biggest ever clients, developed into this more horizontal niche. So we're still working with sports clubs as we always did. We're still working with tech companies as we always did. And we're still working with medical equipment and charities. Those are the big sort of segments, if you like, or big sectors that we work with. But now we're finding their problem is an adoption gap problem. And that's basically, that's the root in. So it's a great question, actually. Thank you for asking it. But yeah, it's been a really interesting year. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that journey, because I think I didn't tell you I was going to ask that, but I assumed there was some issues or there was some understandings learned, which resonate with, a lot of this. My emphasis on this topic is from being on the inside and getting all the buy-in in the world, all the budget, brand new teams, right? But then not being able to serve up those results that I was brought in to do. And I was very open with Salim when we started. It's like, look, I've already proven that I can go get money for big ideas and stuff like that. But like, I don't want to just go and take people's money, right? I want to get results. And like,
this is it.
I don't want to be pissing into the wind either, into 70% failure digital transformation rates, 50% failed CRM adoption rates. We've got to figure this out in a different way. And so that journey, that 3-year journey in a couple different companies, helped a ton. And that's where it's like we don't allow ourselves to niche. Like, it's so hard to break free from best practices and stuff like that. But like, sounds like to me, you're niching into the management team and their understanding of HubSpot, right?
Every conversation takes me closer there. That's exactly right. And it's in another way, it's interesting because that's where I feel like I've come from. My background in media, sales and marketing took me into senior management. It took me into corporate management, group management, whatever you want to call it. So I was getting off on working with teams around the country and even around the world. I've been lucky enough to work in the US, in Australia, and in Africa. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm not, when we were talking to Willem the other day, and he was talking about programmable emails, I'm not in the slightest bit interested in technical HubSpot stuff, really. I'm interested, because I'm a geek and I love HubSpot. But what I'm really interested in is in looking at a business that's spent $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 on technology, and it's sitting there going, it doesn't work. When that's not even the question. That's not even the problem. That's not even the problem.
We're not interested
works. Of course it works.
in figuring it out to make it work on their behalf, right? Because when you do that, it doesn't get used, it doesn't get utilized properly. Even when it does, nobody's on the other side ready to receive the results and leverage them in effective ways, right? And that's the catch 22 of the SaaS industry. And
Yep.
I can't wait to share some of the frameworks I've been working on. But this dynamic created by the big players that say you need lead gen, you need leads. Like leads as an object didn't exist like prior to 1995 when Salesforce said, okay, we need a different object that's not contacts, right? There's some discoveries I've been making about how we approach and what gets to the heart of why everybody feels like they need a tool,
Oh.
like they need to do this in this way, right?
I've got thoughts, Chris. I've got thoughts.
Right? When in reality, and that's where when you can sit down with leaders, because you can sit down with users and champions all day long and they'll have the same realizations. How do you get things done? You talk to people, you build trust. Everybody knows this, but they can't do anything about it if the KPIs are being dropped on their heads.
Yep.
Like because somebody told, like when I started looking at NetSuite, like to try and learn about how NetSuite could be integrated with HubSpot, and first thing I get to is 151 KPIs, like for your CFO, like the best CFO KPI list, right? And it's just like, no wonder we can't have a conversation that doesn't. And as soon as it drives that direction, then it's like, okay, what do we need to do to create those KPIs in the first place so that we can measure stuff? And now we're just as far away from true business strategy as we can be.
Yep.
Right. And that's why I know we're a breath of fresh air when we can sit down with these leaders and we can tell, no, you don't, what are you trying to do? Like,
Yeah.
okay, if that's the goal, this is how we do it. Like, we don't need to develop customer journey analytics or all these things because newsflash, and this is where they're smart people. They've been successful. They've gotten to where they are for a reason.
And they trust us. Just to
right.
They trust us as well and trust partners and trust their team. So when somebody says, how can we improve this thing? And the guy they trust says, well, what we need to do, we need to cut it up into 15 different stages and then understand the conversion rate from here to here to here to here to here to here. They go, okay, cool. Fill your boots, go and do that thing. Why wouldn't they? So we're misleading them as well because of this stuff, I think. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's it. It's like this whole system designed to get the quick wins, to use the point solutions, because that's what happened internally. That was the discovery. Like, because it's to sell stuff, you want to serve the person who asked for the sales call, right? And as I was somebody brought into organizations to lead change, to lead digital transformation, to do things in a different way, I got good at using HubSpot in a very guerrilla tacticy way to start shifting the organization culturally, right? To be more transparent, to do things more proactively. But no matter how much buy-in I had, from my boss, who was the one that hired me, like I wasn't focused on giving them the tools they needed to create the change required in the rest of the organization. And that's what I mean by it. My boss at that point has adopted the idea of me coming in to execute a strategy that I've decided will involve HubSpot, right? But it's still not a business accepted, adopted strategy yet, right? And because of that, there's friction with the sales leaders, with the engineering leaders, with all these people who have been there forever, and I'm coming in to try and move their cheese. And they're not having it, right?
Yep.
And I can't do it. Like the big boss has to do that. The management team needs to be aligned on that.
Yep.
And that's where those are very smart people too, right? And they will align. They just need to work on it together as a management team. And that's where it does. Like one of the best things that, as I was learning more about NetSuite and I was like learning more about ERP manufacturers and how they approach this and this whole SaaS idea that we're talking about. The way to simplify HubSpot for me has been, because it's a very complex system at the end of the day, and it supports complex strategies, and that's why the full platform works now. It's no longer just simple quick wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a communication management platform,
Mm.
and it does it better than anything else that you'll be introduced to in the business setting at the best price, easiest to maintain. And if I could get them there, and because the reason it does that is that it can provide the unified view of the customer,
Yeah.
which 100% of the time, the leader, whoever you're talking to, will agree that they want that.
Yep. Always.
Right.
Always. And you use the C word there, not Christmas. You use you use culture. And this is so important. What if you run a business? And this is the thing that drives me mad about this, right? If you're looking at your business and you are observing these problems, you must surely at some level you must understand you have some fundamental issues, right? And they're probably cultural issues. So you talk about communication, another C word. You talk about communication. What if teams don't want to talk or don't talk, right? Just put in a Slack channel or a Teams channel or HubSpot between them to allow them to talk isn't going to make them talk. How many times has it happened to you? How many times have you brought the service team in, and they use a different data set? or everybody's on Slack and they're on Teams, because their work is special in some way or different or unique, and that's within the one organization, right? A tool is not going to fix that problem. That is so clearly a cultural problem, as are the issues. When you break it down, I think they say culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't completely agree with that, but it's so important. If you said this earlier, if HubSpot can change something in your business, it's the culture. HubSpot can change the culture. It can enable, it can technologicalize or digitalize, perhaps is a better word. I've made that one.
Digitize.
Digitize. Digitalize, because digitize is slightly different, isn't it? I think. Anyway, it can help people communicate and yada, 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 but they got to want to be able to do it. And that's leadership pushing that. That's right. Leadership showing, leadership leading the way, leadership demanding the things that it requires.
Yeah. And it's been so interesting this year just to, like, the pillars of all these different shows kind of just revealed themselves, because it's like, I can't keep selling into this problem, right? HubSpot cannot solve the problem, right? The people that want to use HubSpot are the only ones that can solve the problem. So that's why we end up with, let's build adoption, let's build onboarding.
Yeah.
Even George with Superhuman Framework, right? Like, the people involved are the ones that need help executing with HubSpot, but all the things they need help with have nothing to do with HubSpot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where we're back here. And, even as we look to 2025, I'm having to help other people in the ecosystem understand, like, their value, right? You don't have to know how to use HubSpot or everything about it to be able to help teams using HubSpot.
No.
Right. Like, because if you can simplify while not aiming for easy buttons and quick wins, right, and setting this precedent, right, because leaders, rightfully so, do not pay attention to HubSpot because it is the quick wins, easy button tool, right?
Yep.
And if it is that, it cannot be this, which is a business foundational platform. It's like the ERP platform do not hide their complexity at all, right? They lean into it too much. They hide in a lot of the corners, but that's where it's like finding that balance between, this is the easiest system in the world to use, teams love it, right? It can help you do this, this, and this so quickly, right? At some point, like, what just came to mind is previous company, we were great at the benchtop system, right? That was under 100K. And we were so good at that. led the industry for a long time. But then as we tried to break into bigger companies with the $300,000 system,
Mm,
we were the benchtop guys,
mm,
right?
mm.
We weren't looked to for the complex, solution. So I'll give you, it's a hard line to walk, but it starts with understanding you need to talk to the leadership team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's
The
who
work is
makes that
with the
decision.
leadership, with the management, and whether that is the mom and pop, as you call it, the small business who wants to scale, or the scaling business, or the big business that wants to transform. It's the same solution. Myriad problems, the same solution, and it always comes down to that management process. 100%.
And I can say, like, if you're into dopamine, which most humans are, I've heard,
Yes.
there is no better feeling than the quick results. I'm not going to say quick wins, the quick shift in progress once you get a leader on board
Oh,
with making things happen where things haven't been, you don't know why. And now man, that's one of my favorite feelings because it's like, now, okay, fuck all the bullshit.
yep.
Right? We're done with that. Like, we could just move forward. Everybody's aligned because you got the big boss aligned. Like,
It makes all
surprise,
the difference. Yeah, it makes all
right?
the people do what they get paid to do, or what they can get away with, and they get paid by the leader. So this, it doesn't matter what your team leaders, what HubSpot partners, what these other people are all telling you. You're going to do what the boss says. And when the boss says, "Can you do me a spreadsheet report?" That's what you do, and it just wrecks the entire thing. If your boss says, "Send me a dashboard on HubSpot," and suddenly things are going to start happening.
My favorite.
Yep.
Oh, so that's what we're talking about. That right there. That is adoption of HubSpot by leadership.
100%.
Understanding that they can go, that dashboards can happen, that visibility. The visibility, again, that unified view that they all want comes from their will of understanding what's happening. They all want that visibility. And that's where it's easy to miss this as a part of the ecosystem itself, where inside the jar can't see the label.
Yeah.
This is something that has been a struggle for SaaS forever, right? And if it's a struggle for SaaS, it means leaders haven't had access to it. That's why truly giving a unified view is unbelievably powerful and should win all deals. If you can get them to understand that it can happen. Like, that was my last call, right? Like, but can it do it?
Yeah.
Was the question. And that's where it wasn't actually tactically, can it be done? I don't see HubSpot as anything but a marketing and sales tool. So I literally cannot understand or can't buy in yet that it can do it. And at that point, I'm just like, you see this object over here? Same object as over here, works exactly the same way. Yes, you can do these things in HubSpot. And that's the end of the conversation. But that's where it's that link to HubSpot being this platform that can support the business, right? Once you get leaders on board with that, that is adoption. That's the adoption that we're talking about, because once you have that, all the adoption trickles down.
Yep, 100%. And all of the enablement, all of the training, all of the inline support videos, of course, it all helps. It all helps. But nothing tips the scales like that leadership buy-in, that leadership sponsorship.
It only helps if you have that buy-in, right?
Yeah,
because those are what they all do what the big boss says.
Yeah.
And they don't do what they don't say.
Yes, exactly.
Which includes spending time on training and videos and all this other stuff. Like, throw the best tools and the best enablement in the world. If I don't have clear permission to spend my time on this and not sending the email to the customer, then I'm not doing it. Right. So
that's a really important point.
Adoption, in all forms, strategy, tactics, it's all important throughout these teams. And it's been a fun journey this year, man. And I'm excited uh, to take this into 2025. I do feel like we are starting to win this battle of what HubSpot is and how impactful it can be for businesses.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the better we get at describing the problem and describing the solution to the problem, the better off we all are. And, you know, so as you said, these management teams are highly invested. They're highly intelligent, generally, hugely motivated. As soon as they catch on to the fact that this is something that they themselves need to do, they'll do it. And then that will be an advantage in the marketplace. I have no doubt. And when that happens, we're away.
Indeed. So, as we wrap up 2024, look back at those conversations. I'm sure you've been having them, planning and strategy for 2025. Has leadership been involved? How have they been involved? Are they delegating everything to you? Think through those moments. Maybe line up some conversations early in January. Find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great 2025, everybody.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers, Chris.